Hi everyone, so this is part 3, the last part of this lecture series. And we're going to be moving on from here and reflecting on some ideas that have been mentioned in other lectures as well, through this idea of digital art and process in a different way than traditional mediums, but still experimental in thinking about, you know, is a camera required to make a photograph or make an image? And what are the boundaries around that? So we have talked about indexicality and the materiality of a photograph, and with cyanotypes and with photograms, it's very much a physical object. The photograph is a physical object. When you look at Sean McFarlane in his studio, there are all these physical objects that are photographs everywhere. But can a photograph be an object in a very obvious sense? And I think that's yes, like a photograph can be an object in something you have in a photo album, but also it can be a physical sculpture. So here we've got Martin Smith, our amazing course convener and head of photo art, and this is his work, which is from 2009. He's done other sculptures, photo sculptures as well. He predominantly works with hand cutting text from photographic prints. He's doing some other very interesting things currently at the moment, which I'm sure he will share with us soon. But he works physically into the print and the photograph to change and shift that meaning. So his work's quite often personal stories, diary entries, lyrics, and are quite confessional, sometimes like very dark comedy, sort of black humor or like comedic, but sometimes like often dealing with quite sad or nostalgic or quite heavy content in that sense. So for him, it's a sort of way to reflect on the intimate and the meaningful. But here you can see how he's used like these sort of offcuts, or these sort of remnants of photographs to create a sculpture that's photographic with the photograph at the back. And what does that mean in terms of being a photograph? And we talked about post-medium and post-photography last week as well. So I just wanted to sort of put some things out there in the sense of all these conversations happening, but just show you some works to make you think about how different artists are using processes and playing with the medium in different ways as well. How far can you take it? And is that far enough, or is that changing anything at all? So Justine Camara's work here, she creates two-dimensional, three-dimensional photographic sculptures and collages made entirely out of photographs. So the image on the left was an installation artwork at Cragoma, where the photographs are very sort of abject in a sense, like hairy and skin and fleshy, but draping with mirrors and very physical in that sense. Where the other works here on the right are just like flat image photographs that have been turned into a dimensional form by collaging them, and a quite sort of biological representational. So she's working with these sort of ideas of self-representation, representation to talk about psychological responses and existentialism and existence, but two different approaches that read very differently. So I just wanted to show you those in terms of that conversation. And then I'm going to go more into this idea of the digital and the pixel. And we're moving away from the image being made with light to the image being made with light and pixels, or just pixels. Like currently, cameras and computers, our cameras do use light, but then there's mirrorless or technology that's been made that doesn't require light as well. So what does that mean, and how does that work? So digital art sort of came about with computers and digital cameras in the 1990s. So people were making computer-generated work, scanning or drawing using scanners, and sort of, being able to manipulate and change things in a computer and making collages that were not physical and cutting and pasting. So the first time digital art was used was in the 1980s when computer engineers devised a paint program. And this was used by pioneer digital artist Harold Cohen. But I think digital art has shifted, and with that, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this as well in class when we come back to this idea of how digital art is moving so quickly and how we perhaps don't even think about it like it was really considered quite differently, and with the constant improvements and changes in technologies, how normalized this is now. So we have, I cannot pronounce her last name, Kate. I'll just say Kate's work. So she's looking at this symbiotic relationship between the image, object, and digital representation. So we're going back to the idea of the photograph or the image as an object. So she's creating physical objects here of these digital representations, but she sources her imagery from the internet and then assembles layers and modifies each digital file into these arrangements and then creates his work. Here you can see she also sort of turns them into sculptural forms from there. So she's working in a physical sense, but also like on the computer, sourcing and referencing and collaging digitally and then physically sort of playing with these ideas. And sort of quite conceptual thinking here. She's sort of got like a lot of materials referenced as well. I think, let's hear more about artists talking about their work, and I think that's something I've said is very important in terms of how different all these artists will work in terms of their process, and you thinking about, oh, that's how I work too, or no, I don't agree with that at all, or maybe that's interesting, I should consider it. So something to think about, so she, works with stock images. She splices and distorts them and stretches them and then creates these sort of abstract paintings as well, as you can see here in this video. But it's just a short video, it's like 1 minute. And again, I'll put the links in for you to watch them. So Artie Verkant's work exists at the sort of intersection of abstract and conceptual and physical manifestation. So he's sort of working with this idea of methods, not just as physical objects, but he has this original file, the fabricated object, and then the image turns into objects. So this initial file gets warped and recomposed until the finalized result seems very fabricated. So he's quite interested in this idea of intellectual property as well, permissions and ownerships of digital images and how that exists, and information systems and material experience. So it's interesting with these processes how much you would understand or how much we would know or interpret by looking at them. And that's something to consider as well. How much is it about the process than the final image? Doesn't matter what the image looks like. These are questions to ask and think about. And I've just put a little video of Artie talking about his practice and work, just a 4-minute video there for you to look at. So Lucas Larlock, his work is really quite like working with humour and failure in the sense that he creates really bad photoshops. It's not meant to be great. They're meant to be something artificial and posed. They're meant to be very obviously constructed and theatrical. So like these constructed representations that are meant to be like a bit off and a bit weird and a bit rough intentionally, and we're used to seeing all these sort of perfected images everywhere. So he shifts that, with this slight shift in the image. And here again, it gets very like silly, like weird Photoshop fingers on a watermelon. and they're awkward and they're not well done, but that's part of this story and this thing he's telling and this imperfection he's working with in terms of, is the photographic real? Is the photographic truth? Photograph in terms of photographic realism and talking about that, and talking representation and how we sort of process images. So he's playing with that. And I've showed you Doug's work last trimester as well, but I just thought if we're talking about digital and how things are really shifted, artists working with Google Street View to create works, and YouTube to find images, and then he's photographing them on his computer monitor, which is either a photograph or is he taking a screenshot, and then is it a photograph, is it his work? Lots of questions around that. So I wanted to bring that up again, and I've put quite a few links for you here in terms of the conversations around like digital image making, and this idea of internet art, and truth, and how things are shifting, and these sort of things that are being constantly updated, and artists are working in very different ways constantly around this. And I just wanted to share some avenues if you were interested in that, to go do your own research and find out about this, what you think and how you feel. So there's an essay by Anne March as well that I put in there because it's accessible online. I thought very easy for you to just have a look, and she references a lot of the theorists we've been looking at and we talk about quite often in our other lectures as well. And how do you feel about her argument? Do you agree or disagree? And that's something to consider. What's your own interpretation and evaluation and reflection on that information? So again, this is all in a PDF on the course content, so you can click on those links directly, which you can't do on YouTube, but you can do it there. And if you have any questions about the lecture, bring them to class, or send an email, or bring it when we're back on the online systems, or reflect on it in your journal, your e-journal, which you should be working on. So talk to you later. Bye.